Hello, and welcome to MOBE Mondays.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Moyo, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this segment of MOBE Mondays. It's a very important segment, even magical, and I'm dedicating it to three people. Two are on the MOBE executive team, Yvonne Orr, and our MVP, Pat Shields, and also to Jeanette Foreman. All of them have a story about the topic today, which is breast cancer, and a survivor story. Did you know that breast cancer is different for Black women and men? And yes, men can get breast cancer too. You'll hear about that. And Richard Roundtree and Mathew Knowles are just a few of the vocal people about their diagnoses. It's about saving lives, and we're breaking down the information you need to know about breast cancer today. The clinical trials, breast cancer health, treatment, surviving breast cancer, and thriving. Our host, Roslyn Young Daniels of Black Health Matters, and she is Roslyn Young Daniels of Black Health Matters, and she will lead the conversation with Ricki Fairley, who will be with us momentarily, co-founder of and CEO of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, Dr. Monique Gray, breast surgical oncologist and medical director of the cancer program at Grandview Health, and Aubrey Glencamp, the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. This session is powered by our longtime sponsor, AARP, and will be live on Facebook. And those of you who are on Facebook, we encourage you to share it. We can't get enough information about this topic, breast cancer and Black people. Again, I'm Yvette Moyo, and it's my pleasure to sign off now. But first, I'm going to introduce you to our moderator. And Roslyn is just, that blessed us with her time and her expertise to give us a little bit more insight and run this conversation. Hi, Ricki. Welcome.
How are you?
Welcome.
Sorry, I'm running. I was like in a horrible rainstorm where the traffic just stopped. So
that's quite all right. Actually, you're right on time. I just mentioned your name. So your timing is, let's say, magical.
And it's good to see you, Yvette. It's so good to see you.
It is so good to see you as well. What a journey we've been on. Actually, MOBE is 30 years old next year. And we'll tell you more about that. I'm the founder, founded in my 30s. And it was just an opportunity to make sure that we exchange information in a way that's culturally right for us and in a way that accelerates the results that are desired. And we do that in coalition. And so I just want to bless you and thank you for being here today. Ricki is one of our legacy MOBE veterans, and we'll say more about that at another time. But join us in DC, April 21st and 22nd for our 30th annual MOBE conference. So I'm going to move on to introduce you to our moderator. Thank you, Ricki, for that. Our moderator, Roslyn Young Daniels, is president and founder of Black Health Matters. And it is the leading health promotion and disease management online platform serving the needs of consumers, patients, and physicians. She is a tireless advocate for eliminating health disparities by improving health literacy of African American consumers and patients. An ovarian cancer survivor herself, Roslyn often speaks to the importance of self-care and of being a knowledgeable patient. Roslyn is vice chair of the Health and Human Services facet for Bergen County, New Jersey chapter of the Links Incorporated, and is a member of the health ministry at Abyssinian Baptist Church and a member of Women in Color in Pharma. Please welcome Roslyn Young Daniels. Roslyn, I think you're muted.
Okay.
All right, there you are, doctor.
All right. So thank you so much for that warm introduction. I appreciate all that you've done in terms of your advocacy in promoting African American businesses. And I thank you for allowing us to discuss breast cancer and its impact in the African American community this evening.
My pleasure. I'm going to sign off and appreciate the conversation. To you, each and every one of you, I salute you for your time, your efforts, and being magical.
Awesome. So good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Roslyn Young Daniels, president and founder of Black Health Matters. So it's appropriate to be here this evening. As you know, Black Health Matters is the voice for African American patients, caregivers, and everyone looking to build a community around wellness. We advocate that everyone should be proactive about their care, seek the best medical physicians services possible, and to be optimistic. And so we have an amazing panel assembled this evening that's going to both share from information with you from a medical perspective and also provide personal testimonials. Because as someone once told me at Abyssinian Baptist, everyone needs a testimonial. So we're going to start by having our panel introduce themselves. So let's start with our medical expert, Dr. Monique Gary.
Good evening, and thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here and to share with you. My name is Dr. Monique Gary. I am a breast surgical oncologist, so fellowship trained in breast cancer surgery, and I'm the medical director of the cancer program at Grandview Health. We are part of the Penn Cancer Network. I'm also the founder and director of the Cancer Genetics and Risk Assessment Program because there is a need, an increased need for us to identify those people who are at the highest risk for cancers and to make sure that we offer the appropriate screening for those people in our communities. I'm a faculty member of Temple University School of Medicine, Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and Texas Christian University School of Medicine, and I am just honored to be here with you tonight, my fellow LINCS members, and Aubrey. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. All right, Aubrey, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Aubrey Glencamp. I'm here from Gainesville, Georgia. 2016, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Just to everyone else's knowledge, that was shock to me as well. But since that time, I've used my voice to share my story, and it's been shared all across the globe in hopes to change that stigma that, men would associate to breast cancer and, bring out and make sure that men aren't afraid to voice their opinions and lean on one another. And that's why I'm an advocate with the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. And, since that time, I'm a husband, I'm a father, but most importantly, I'm a survivor.
Awesome. That's excellent. And then introducing you to Ricki Fairley.
How are you? It's so great to be here with my friends. It's so good to see you, Aubrey, and love you, Mo. But I'm the CEO and co-founder of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. I'm a now 10-year survivor of triple negative breast cancer. I'm a very avid activist, and I believe that Black breast cancer is a different disease, and we need to do a lot of work to keep ourselves healthy and to eradicate it. So I'm so happy to be here today with my friends. I love you, Roz.
Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, let's start with the conversations. And again, everyone from home, please feel free to put questions in the chat. You may be going through this, you may have a friend, and you may want to be able to ask people who have taken this walk or is the medical expert. You may have reservations about the advice that you've given. So this is the perfect forum for you to raise your hand. All right, let's talk about the forms of breast cancer. There are several, and I probably can't even pronounce them. So can we start with DCIS? And is that the most common form of breast cancer? And then let's go down the list.
Wow. All right. I'll start with that one. DCIS stands for ductal carcinoma in situ. And the word situ looks like the word situation because it's in the situation or the place where it started. So I use food analogies because everybody knows food. So when I talk to patients, we talk in food. If you think of a can of Pillsbury biscuits, in order for you to get the biscuits out, you got to break the seal and break that can open. DCIS means the abnormal cells in that duct have grown so much that they filled up the duct, but it didn't break out of the duct yet. So it's in situ and it's stage 0. Stage 0 is actually not the most common form of cancer. Invasive cancer actually is more common, but stage 0, very treatable, usually only diagnosed on screening mammograms. And so that's an important thing to note. The earliest forms of breast cancer many times are not diagnosed on things like ultrasounds or palpation. It's going to be the mammogram.
Excellent, excellent. All right, can you just speak to us also about the definition of metastatic and triple negative?
Absolutely.
And we'll throw triple negative to Ricki, and if you could just speak to us about metastatic and invasive, those definitions.
You got it. So once cancer breaks out of the place where it started, whether it started in the lobules, the fluffy parts of the breast that make the milk, or the ducts, the places that carry the milk. 75% of breast cancers are going to start in those milk ducts. And once it breaks out of those milk ducts, think about, again, that Pillsbury can of biscuits or crescent rolls now has broken open. That's what the word invasive means. It means the seal around that duct is broken and the cells are starting to break out into or invade the surrounding breast tissue. It does not mean metastatic. So cancer will metastasize. It will spread. Most common place it spreads to first are the lymph nodes under the arm, because that's where the breast drains to. Just like our head drains to the glands in our neck, our breast drains to the glands under the arm. So cancer may metastasize, but once it leaves the armpit or the axilla and goes elsewhere in the body, it then becomes metastatic. So sometimes people will read it's metastatic to their lymph nodes and they'll think I have stage 4 cancer. That is not the case. Metastatic breast cancer means that it is now out of the breast, out of the lymph nodes, and somewhere else within the body. And then cancer is further broken down according to subtypes based on whether or not estrogen is driving it to grow or not. And that takes us into the conversation about hormone receptors and triple negative breast cancer.
All right, so Ricki, talk to us about triple negative breast cancer.
I just said, keep going, Mo. Let her explain it. Let the scientist explain it, and then I can talk about it.
Well, I don't want to monopolize a conversation, but the easiest way to think about hormone receptors is that every cancer has a subtype, meaning it's like saying I'm a woman, but I'm a woman with brown hair. I'm a woman with green eyes. It's the type of the cancer that you have and what's driving it to grow. So there are 3 stations on top of a cancer cell that we look for, one for estrogen, one for progesterone, another female hormone. The third one is called HER2. And when we do a biopsy, we look at those cancer cells under the microscope. We're looking for those 3 stations. And I tell patients, it's like looking for toll booths on the PA Turnpike. If you got the toll booth, then we know you're using dollars, and estrogen is the dollar. And so we can offer you a pill to then block your estrogen or take away your dollars so you don't drive new cancers to grow. Women who don't have those receptors are in the easy pass lane. They've got triple negative breast cancer. They need chemotherapy because there isn't a pill that we could give them, and estrogen's not driving it to grow. So Ricki, I'm going to punt over to you and let you talk a bit more about triple negative breast cancer.
Sure. So triple negative breast cancer has the highest mortality rate. It's the most aggressive, and it affects Black women at 3 times the rate of white women. We often get it younger, and it's a nasty disease. The thing that really makes us special is that it's the only breast cancer subtype that does not have a drug to prevent recurrence. So you may have heard of something like tamoxifen or something that you take for 5 years to prevent your cancer from coming back. We don't have a drug. My drug is God. We don't have a drug. And really, we've never had a targeted therapy until the last 2 years. We now have 2 drugs that are targeted for our disease. One of them is called Trodelvy. One of them is called Keytruda. And they both are available now on the market for metastatic triple negative. Now we have one drug really in the last 2 months, Keytruda, that's available for early stage triple negative. But until recently, we didn't even have a targeted medication for our disease. So for me, I took the standard of care chemo. I did a double mastectomy. I did chemo. I did radiation. And then a year to the day of my diagnosis, my cancer came back on my chest wall. And because the drugs didn't work for me. And so I had to go on some experimental drugs, 2 different drugs to get rid of my cancer. So my doctor at that point had given me 2 years to live, and I'm on 10. So God had another plan for me.
Awesome, awesome. Aubrey, when you were diagnosed, what were you diagnosed? What stage? What kind of breast cancer?
Stage 2, HER2 positive.
Okay, all right. So how was that diagnosed? Was it a screening? How did you find out?
So I went for, after my wife found it, she found a lump on my left breast. And I came in for a mammogram. And then from the mammogram, they were able to see that there was something there. And then after they did the biopsy, that's when they found out what it was. So that was pretty much the fast route of, me being diagnosed.
So one of the things that we said prior to going live was that once you're diagnosed, it is a shock. But Dr. Gary was saying maybe you need to live in that shock just a little bit, just in that moment. It's a blow when you get that diagnosis. Can you tell me how you both responded when you got that news?
Sure. For me, I was at work and I got the call. I was thinking, it's gonna be something easy. Nothing was there, but I mean, he told me on the phone, and I had to take a moment and step out. And I remember sitting in my car thinking, what am I gonna do at this point? And how am I gonna tell my family? All of those things went through my head, and I made a point to, whatever the outcome was gonna be, I was gonna make sure, I shared my story and not hide it, in hopes that, early detection and men that may not have thought about, checking themselves, that they do think about it, or wives are able to tell their husbands. So, I made it a point to share my story at that point in time and document the process and, go from there.
Terrific. No, that's all. That's important. Very important. Ricki, what about you?
So, I was your typical, crazy person, business person, crazy mom. And I literally was going to the Boston airport. I had just taken Haley back to Dartmouth. And my doctor found my cancer on an annual checkup. So make sure you get those. And so I went through all the stuff. And then I took Haley back to school to Dartmouth. And I was actually going on a 3-week business trip. So I was flying from Boston to San Francisco. And my doctor called me as I was going through security. Yes, you do have breast cancer. I said, well, you know what? I really don't have time for this right now. So I'll call you when I get home. And I got on a plane to California, and I was more worried about the speech I had to give the next morning for my work than the concept of breast cancer. Like, I literally put it out of my mind. And then 3 days later, she called me back and said, well, Ricki, you not only have breast cancer, but you have triple negative breast cancer. And I said, well, that can't be so bad. What does that mean? And then I went to Dr. Google, and I said, there were 3 things on Google at the time. You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die now. So I said, well, maybe I should go home. And I went home into the whirlwind of it. But it was really very shocking. And we as Black women, we don't, we're running 150 miles an hour and taking care of everybody else. So to stop and say, whoa, you have to stop and deal with this was really, very crazy.
Dr. Gary, would you say that breast cancer might be something that might be silent? Like we think about hypertension being a silent, I don't want to say killer, but the ramifications of a heart attack or a stroke are quite immeasurable. With breast cancer, are there any other signs that we can think of? We know that mammograms are incredibly important. Is there something that we might see, taste, smell, that might make us run into that doctor's office sooner than later?
It's a great question. The number one sign of breast cancer is no sign at all, as you mentioned. But there are signs and symptoms. And I can tell you that people have been home during COVID and they've had these signs and symptoms, and they have been uncertain whether or not to go to their doctors because of the coronavirus. But if you see things in your breast or your chest like lumps, so dimpling or changes in the shape of your breast, if you see thickening of the skin, so when you look at breast skin changes, many times in the textbooks or Google, you'll see the word peau d'orange or peel of the orange. And on lighter skinned people, on white people, it looks a lot different. It looks red and angry. On people with darker hues, it may just look like a grapefruit peel where you can see every single pore. But if your skin has turned thick, has turned red, has turned angry appearing, those are things that you need to go to the doctor for. Nipple inversion. If that nipple has always gone in, and both of them do the same thing, that's fine. But if your nipple is starting to invert for no reason and it's only on one side, you want to get to your doctor. nipple discharge, another thing to be concerned about. So, and then feeling lumps under the arm as well, definitely something to be mindful of. And, we recommend what's called self-breast awareness now, and they're getting away from this term of self-breast exam. And it's more about becoming aware of whatever the natural state of your breast or your chest is.
Understood. So in terms of the mammogram, when should Black women start to get them?
I love this question because it is a hot topic right now. The American Cancer Society recommends that women start screening, women at average risk start screening at 45. We know from risk models, and there was an article that just came out last week in the Annals of Internal Medicine that has calculated that if Black women started at 40 years of age, they would see a survival that more closely mirrors that of white women, and that we would diagnose cancers early. So if we began at age 40, the models predict that we would see a decrease in cancer deaths by almost 57%. And those are calculated sort of risk models, so computational models. Black women should begin screening at age 40 if you are at average risk, meaning no first degree relatives, mother, father, sister, brother with breast cancer. People in your family are not under the age of 50. If you have those people in your family, someone was diagnosed at 40 or 35 or younger, then you're not at average risk. And it's a real problem because I don't think doctors are going through the family history and telling women, well, you're at average risk and you're at high risk and you're above average. And that's something that every woman should be asking their doctor about.
So it's important to know your risk factors, again, if it's in your family, and make sure regardless, start your mammograms at the age of 40.
Or 10 years younger than the youngest person, yes.
Yeah. Roz, I would add too, the numbers are not in our favor as Black women because Black women under 35 get breast cancer at twice the rate of white women and die at 3 times the rate. So 40 is not soon enough for us. So it's so important to know her story and talk to your mom and your grandma and your aunties and your dads because it could be passed down through your dads, right? Aubrey knows that very well. So we don't talk about disease at the kitchen table in our families. We don't talk about stuff, and we really need to talk about it and understand what you're up against because it's different for us. It's different for Black women, and we may need to be getting those mammograms earlier than the age of 40. So and also knowing your body, know your body, look at your body, feel your breasts, touch them, stand in the mirror. It's okay to know your body.
Yes, absolutely. So what about support systems? So I can just tell you a little bit, right? I am a strong, powerful Black woman, right? And when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I literally said, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to tell anyone. My physician had to spend 45 minutes with me, and she's a busy doctor, 45 minutes on the phone with me, explaining why I could not take this walk alone, why I needed to tell my parents. And my first reaction, well, my parents are like, they're old and they'll worry. And why I needed to tell my son, well, he couldn't stand that stress. Talk to us about why it's so important to have support and resources.
We don't like to ask for help because we are badass powerhouses controlling everything. Helicopter moms, helicopter grandmas. That's why I was at my grandkids babysitting today. I'm the nanny. We take care of everybody, but you can't make it alone. We say, no one fights alone. You really can't fight this fight alone. You need support. You need emotional support. You need help with getting your treatment. You should never, ever, ever go to the doctor alone, even if you can't take someone there, FaceTime with them, Zoom with them, whatever. But you cannot do this journey alone. And it's so funny. My friends knew that I would not ask for help, and so I had friends from my whole life, from childhood, from college, from working, just show up, and they never talked to me about it. But on Sunday, somebody would come and somebody would leave for a year. And I never asked for help, but they showed up. They helped me sell my house. They did projects in my house. They took me to chemo. They held my head over the toilet. They drove me to every doctor's appointment. And I don't know what I would have done without them. And so we literally started a club called SMAD, Sisters Making a Difference. And
No, that's so important. Aubrey, tell us about your support systems.
So I had a great support system from my side. Like I said, I shared it with my family. I shared it with some close friends. It's not my first rodeo having something so, I don't want to say near death, but I actually had open heart when I was 19. So
Mm,
for me, I was thinking I'm Superman, and here it is, I have this huge hurdle to overcome. So when I was first diagnosed, I was into obstacle course racing, and I was diagnosed on that Wednesday, and I had a race on that Saturday. And I told my friend that I was running with, hey, I just got diagnosed, but I'm gonna still do it. I don't know when I'm gonna have this opportunity to do it again. And my family was behind me. The one thing that I made sure I told them was, if you are going to cry around me, like my mom, I told her, do that away from me, because if I'm having a positive attitude during this time and I'm dealing with it, then, I just want the same energy around. And I remember my oncologist telling me, it's going to be days that's going to suck. And it's days that you're going to feel horrible. And that's okay, but I had friends that, took time off to take me to my chemotherapy appointments. And like Ricki said, people were stopping by and dropping off things. And, my wife was pregnant at the time.
oh my
I
goodness.
think we're going to talk about that later, but, so we had a whole support system that definitely worked out, and, people praying for us and that type of thing. So support is definitely something that's needed to get through this.
Wonderful. So you tapped into it.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please, no, Dr. Gary.
I was just going to say, I give Aubrey so much credit because, I see a few men every year, and there are so few that there really aren't great support circles. We hear a lot of sister circles. There's an awful lot of pink washing, as we call it, going on. But for men with breast cancer, many times they don't have that support network, and they don't always have, survivors and thrivers who are willing to even talk about it. And we really do need to normalize talking about these things in our families. I have this saying that we're as sick as the secrets we keep, right? And when we keep these things in, it robs our families of the chance to show up for us. It causes so much stress in the body that manifests as more illness. We're not sleeping well, we're not eating well, now we're hiding things. And it's just a really unfortunate thing to watch a patient go through their cancer journey by themselves. And when we don't talk about it in families, then our younger generation, our children, our siblings don't have the opportunity to maybe get screened and know what they're at risk for. And so we really have to normalize having these conversations.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Tell me about what we should be asking and looking for in the breast cancer doctor, the oncologist that we choose. Is there a common thread? Is there, something we should be asking up front? It's very hard to listen, right? When you're in that seat, all you can think about is my life, and this is just horrible. So to your point, you need to have someone sitting with you. Well, what do I need? If I had to have a checklist, what are 3 things I need to expect from a culturally competent, smart, caring physician that's going to take care of me?
Can I start, Mo?
Go for
on
it.
this one. So the one thing I love about Dr. Mo is that the first thing she says to a new patient, I've heard her say this all the time, is that I'm going to treat you like family. And to me, that's all 3 things. I'm going to treat you like family. So even when a doctor says, well, you could do this or you could do this, here's your options, whatever, I'm like, well, what do you recommend for your mom? What do you recommend for your daughter? What do you recommend for your auntie? What do you recommend for your grandmother? And just being treated like family is the most important thing, because then you'll make the best scientific decisions. You'll have the best care, give the best care, and you'll be passionate about your patient. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I think Mo, but you talk Mo now.
Well, I think you're right. That's like the highest thing we can do. But before you even get there, I think you want to make sure that your doctor has expertise in the field. A lot of breast cancer surgery is done by general surgeons, but you want to make sure that those surgeons, if they're not trained in breast cancer surgery specifically, that they have expertise and that they have experience in treating the condition that you have. If they're a medical oncologist, whatever, you do want someone with a breadth of experience. You want someone who is willing to explain things in plain language and answer questions. Someone who is available. If their hand is on the doorknob and they're halfway out the door and you haven't even gotten to your questions, it may not be a good fit for you. And the third thing I think is you want somebody who's going to partner with you. Any doctor who comes in and tells you what you're going to do is probably not the doctor for you, because there are many different pathways and options for how we treat cancer. And our job is not to just tell a patient what's going to happen paternalistically. Our job is to partner with patients and make sure that they understand all of their options and that they understand, which ones are the recommended and preferred options, that they understand things like clinical trials, reconstruction. There's so much that goes into a cancer diagnosis, and any doctor who doesn't have the patience to partner with a patient doesn't deserve to care for that patient.
Amen. I love that. And also, and again, to your point, seeking the best care possible. So again, for everyone out there, what is the expression? If you want Italian food, you don't go to the Mexican restaurant and order Italian food, right?
That's
You
right.
want to go to the best Italian restaurant to get that food because they do it every day. They have all kinds of generational tips. So that's what you want. So don't shortchange yourself. Look and ask for the very best. Let me just ask you about the affording breast cancer. It is expensive. The bills, the treatments, chemo, all of that. What is your recommendation for people to say, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to afford to survive this, to go through this?
Well, I think your family can't afford to not have you around. Let's start there. Right. And so for the people who are sitting there trying to figure out if they're going to pursue care, if they're going to consider things like chemotherapy, our cancer programs in general are designed to help patients find financial resources, and they're not always great at it. Many times they're short-staffed, and depending on what communities you go to, there are more resources than others. And this is why it is important to get a second opinion, to go to a different health system and see what's being offered to you. But our job is to help you through that cancer journey and not to make you have to choose between, your mortgage and your chemo. And so there should be a social worker, ideally a financial navigator. And this is a new area of cancer care, because we recognize that I don't care how many vacations you missed in 2020, you didn't budget for breast cancer, right? This was not on the radar. And so there should be programs in place. Some hospitals call them charity care, but there are a lot of resources. Ricki can tell you about Touch, Tiger Lily, Living Beyond Breast Cancer. There are grants, and it's hard for a patient who's going through treatment to be proactive about applying for these things, but a social worker should be helping, family members, advocacy groups. It all works together. But the first thing you got to prioritize, I tell my patients, you got to eat good food, you got to get good rest, and you've got to start working on finding peace of mind with this journey, because those are the things that you got to see yourself on the other side of this. And the bills will come. It's not cheap. It is a toxicity for generations sometimes. But that part of it, if you're not here, none of that matters. What matters is your life.
Can I just say, I just want to say that, when I had my journey, I was very clear. I can't afford to be here. I don't have that kind of money. I was divorcing. I probably, I could have lost my insurance at any given time. But my doctor went to the mats for me. So because I did not have fear about raising my hand and said, look, I'm broke, help me. She helped me. So everyone, there's no stigma here. Someone out there is going to be able to help you through this and help pay your bills. And you may walk out maybe having to write a small check or a little bit more, but there are resources out there.
There's a lot of breast cancer resources. And so, call me, we could talk about it. But yeah, I call them, these are my, $1 million fake boobs. Because that's the cost, right? But there's a lot of advocacy groups that provide funding, and we can help you navigate through those waters and help you. And a lot of hospitals have funding, so you just have to ask for it. You can't be afraid to ask for it, and ask your doctor, ask your offices for help.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about clinical trials. Let's take that shift. Aubrey, what can you tell me about clinical trials? What's your point of view?
I wish during my time I didn't go through any clinical trials, so I didn't have any experience with that. I just went through the traditional surgery and chemotherapy for mine.
Okay. Do you have a point of view on clinical trials that you might want to share with the audience?
I think it's definitely worth it to look into. I'm a huge researcher, and that was something that I constantly do. At the time when I was diagnosed, I wasn't sure what to do other than, trying to get this thing out of me as quickly as possible. I was told about some alternative things, but at the time it was, I just decided to go with, what was the quickest and, go from there. But I wish I did get more information about clinical trials. That wasn't something that was brought up by my oncologist or my surgeon. So, at that time, it's not something that I knew about. But since my diagnosis and, participating on different panels and stuff, it's starting to realize that there are other options and, things that I wish, I could have taken a different approach on.
Okay, understood. No, that's helpful. I know, Ricki, what's your POV on clinical trial participation?
I think you know how I feel. So right now, we only have 3% participation of Black women in clinical trials. We have a 42% higher mortality rate than white women. Black women with breast cancer have a 71% higher risk of death. Black women with breast cancer have a 39% higher recurrence than white women. Black women under 35 get breast cancer at twice the rate, die at 3 times the rate. Something is wrong with the drugs. The drugs are not working on our bodies. My first 3 drug standard of care didn't work on me. I went on experimental drugs. We don't have the therapies that we need for our bodies. We need to do research about that. We need to understand that better. So I can't stress enough how important it is for us to participate in clinical trials. And I know that there's a lot of mistrust in our medical system, but a lot of those bad things that happened are now illegal, and laws have been put into place to protect you. And the things that I say, I don't think people would understand that in cancer.
Ricki, I'm sorry, can you speak a little bit closer to your mic?
Sorry, yeah. I think Black women are afraid of clinical trials because of our history, but it's really important to understand what standard of care is. That standard of care means you're not going to get a sugar pill. There's no sugar pill. There's no placebo drug. You're going to get standard of care, or you're going to get a drug that could be better for you. And so we have to walk into that science, because until we do this science, we are going to keep dying. So it's so important to participate. And I say, if you're afraid and you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for your daughter. Do it for your daughter. So you're here for your daughters. You're here for your sons. You're here for your grandkids. And hopefully you'll create some science that will prevent them from getting breast cancer. So we're actually starting a movement to help Black women better understand what it takes, what research is all about, what the fundamentals are, and how important it is to save our lives. Because the mortality rates for Black women are just out of control and unnecessary, but we need therapies that work on our bodies and are tested on our bodies. So it's really important.
Dr. Gary, do you prescribe clinical trials for your patients?
So I do. I'm also the chairman of the Institutional Review Board. So I'm the chairman of the research committee at my institution. So all clinical trials for our health system come through me. But yes, I do recommend clinical trials. I will sit down with patients and review what those trials are so that they can know early on in their treatment journey that trials are not something we do when everything else fails, but that clinical trials are a way for us to learn more information to make medicine more personalized, right? Everybody sees these cancer commercials, and we are in the era of personalized medicine, but we cannot personalize the medicine to a genome that we don't have and that we don't know and that we don't understand. And so as we look for less toxic therapies, because nobody I know wants to go through chemo, and in particular our culture, we feel like, this medicine, it can be toxic, and we want to try to avoid toxicities and go as natural and as holistic as we can and learn how food can be medicine and all these things. But we can't get to the point of less toxic therapies if we don't try those therapies and in conjunction with some of the standards of care. And so if we want personalized, less toxic medicine, we got to participate. We've got to be counted. On the subject of male breast cancer, there's only about 11 clinical trials for male breast cancer. Yeah. And so we're finding now that we can expand some of the existing trials to include a male cohort. And I don't know why this is like a light bulb moment for researchers, right, but many of the trials that we're doing now are not specifically designed for men, but will include an arm for men so that we can better understand how the drugs work for them. Things like cold cap therapy for women, things like taking anti-estrogen and hormonal pills to try to treat our cancers. And so it's really important for us when we hear that word, when we hear that term, not to just think, oh, that doesn't involve me, that's not for me, or that's only for people for whom traditional therapies have failed, because it's not. Not all trials are drug trials. Not all clinical trials are even for just cancer patients. There are trials for family members and support advocates. And, like there's so many different trials for people who have family histories even of breast cancer. There's a great study called the Wisdom Study that's looking at how to personalize your screening. What screening should you get based on your family history? You don't have to have cancer for that. And it's important information for our community.
So people are talking about, using sage and burning thyme and not getting their hair relaxed, not using nail polish. There's formaldehyde and nail polish. What are we to believe? Because the cases of breast cancer and mortality is very high in our community. What do we believe? What do we do?
I think we have to use balance and we have to use wisdom in the sense that one, every drug is a poison, even water. If you drink too much water, it is poisonous and you could die. There are many things that we can and cannot control. The number 1 and 2 risk factors for breast cancer, being a woman getting older, can't control those. God willing, we'll keep doing both. African American, family history. So some things are out of our control, but there are preventable risk factors. And so I encourage my patients to look at those preventable things, because you can't control what happened to you, but we can control our attitude. We can control what we do with our bodies, exercise and movement. We can control what we put in our mouths, whether it's smoking, whether it's alcohol, whether it's processed meats. And so there are some things that we can look at, and it's not an either or philosophy where we only have to do CMOS and we can't do chemo. If we believe our bodies can heal themselves, right? If we believe our bodies have those self-healing principles, then why can't our bodies heal and recover after chemotherapy, right? Why can't our bodies recover after surgery? And so I tell patients it's not either or, it's and. We can take all those things and work together and come up with a treatment plan for you that incorporates what you believe and supplements that you might want to use, as long as they don't conflict with some of the other medicines we're prescribing for you. But we can do a balanced approach that doesn't make you have to sacrifice what you believe about your diet and your nutrition and your holistic philosophies.
So what therapies and what's coming on the horizon? I know Ricki was giving us kind of a preview of what is to come. And then Dr. Gary, you were sharing before we went live that you're excited about a lot that's on the horizon. Please share that with the audience this evening.
I am, despite these statistics that we hear, Black women really are living longer with breast cancer. We are seeing increased survival than 15 years ago, than 20 years ago. I think we still have gains to catch up to our white counterparts, but I think in general, we have seen the effectiveness and we have seen the change in our community regarding adopting all of the more aggressive therapies. So we know that Black women are less likely to be referred for aggressive therapies like chemotherapy. But when a doctor partners with a patient and sits down and explains it, women are 23% more likely, Black women are 23% more likely to go through with more of the aggressive therapies that could be life-saving. So having, doctors that take time and that care, representation matters, having Black doctors where you can, who know and can speak to you from that cultural vantage point, I think are important. We are in the era of personalized medicine. And when we take out a tumor, we're able to do a lot of genome testing or tumor testing to see, is this a tumor that would respond to chemotherapy if it's a small early tumor? Is it truly aggressive? So we're looking at gene studies for tumors. Immunotherapy, as Ricki alluded to, Keytruda and some other drugs are now becoming more of the mainstay. And unfortunately, they are given with the more toxic chemotherapies, but we're getting to the point where we can get less and less and less toxic and more specific. And that equals hope. It equals quality of life. It equals longevity. And so we got to get on board and make sure that we are counted for in the studies, in the trials, that we are given these medications and that we're not holding ourselves back, because we have fears or reservations about it, because the mistrust is real and it's earned. But when we're at the table, we are not on the menu. So Black doctors and researchers are at the table so that our people aren't on the menu.
That's excellent. That's good to know. Aubrey, what are you excited about with your advocacy and talking with men and what you're learning about Black men with breast cancer?
I think just changing this, the stigma. So I've had several conversations with different men, and the Male Breast Cancer Coalition reached out to me when my story was shared, and just to see a whole source of support of other men that you thought wasn't experiencing the same thing you were. You thought you were the unicorn in the room. So having that ability to share the story, and then even working with them to change the stigma, and not just pink wash, but adding in the blue, so that from a male standpoint, they're not ashamed of speaking their truth, or they're not ashamed of calling it breast cancer or what it is, and making sure that they get treatment for that. So for me, it's just sharing that story and making sure men know it's okay. There's other guys out here with you that support you, and we'll get through this.
All right, amen to that. We have a question from the audience. If this is from a person from Facebook, are survivors getting away from reconstruction? From June on Facebook, I had breast cancer 16 years ago and had a lumpectomy, radiation, and hormone therapy. I was devastated when it came back. I decided to have a double mastectomy and reconstruction, and I'm on hormone therapy as well. Is recurrence normal?
I can speak to that a little bit. So, for Black women, we do have a 39% higher recurrence rate than white women. And we really don't know why, because we don't have the science to understand it too well. But there's a huge debate over whether you should have a mastectomy or a lumpectomy, and that lumpectomy plus radiation. And I always vote for a mastectomy, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I always say that not only for your physical health, but also for your mental health, so that you don't have to think about it anymore, remove the breast tissue. But I think as Black women, we need to think about all the options available to us, because our disease is different. And I often, if you go to a white doctor, I would say, well, what happens with your Black patients when you do this? Whether it's reconstruction, whether it's a mastectomy, whether it's chemo, whatever, because I want them to consider the fact that our breast cancer is different. So ask the question. Don't be afraid to say, hold on, how many Black patients have you had this experience with? How many Black patients have you done a lumpectomy and survived? So I just want to make it known that the science for us is different, and we should acknowledge it and deal with it, and maybe deal with it differently. So, for example, my doctor had only had 2 cases of triple negative, and both of the women died after 9 months. So that's why she told me I was going to die in 2 years, because she didn't have the knowledge or the experience with that. So, but challenging the doctor, and not all doctors are as wonderful as Mo. You can fire your doctor, but ask the question and say, what do you know about Black women? What's your experience with our bodies? How many Black patients have you treated? And even Black doctors, that's that question.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Dr. Gary, what's your thoughts about recurrence? How often in one's lifetime could you be battling breast cancer?
It's true. And I'll tackle the second question first, since you asked that one again. And, the risk of breast cancer recurrence depends upon the subtype. It depends upon the stage. And after a double mastectomy, the risk is still not zero.
Right.
There is still a risk of breast cancer. And so I see my cancer patients every 6 months for the first 5 years, and then annually thereafter. And if you have breast tissue, if you don't, we go over, how do my lymph nodes feel? What do my scars feel like? How does my skin feel? Because if cancer is going to come back, it will come back a lot of times in the skin after mastectomy, because there's just no breast tissue left. But for early stage breast cancer, the risk of recurrence is low. You take 1 penny out of 100 and you cut that penny in half. If you do radiation, that should be 1/2 of 1% per year. And that doesn't take into account your family history, your other risk factors for breast cancer, like inflammation, like prior cancers, like radiation, other things. And by radiation, I mean like mantle radiation for lymphomas and things like that. So there are other risk factors for recurrence. But the risk generally is low, and it's acceptable enough that we are able to offer lumpectomies instead of mastectomies for certain stage disease. So it's a very nuanced conversation that a person has to have, and it's unfortunate, it's horrible when cancer does come back. And so this is why we focus on, what do I look for moving forward? And one of the best questions you can ask your doctor, no matter whether you have a cancer diagnosis or you have a
We are having difficulties, and we'll be back to Dr. People who won't even step into their doctor's office because of COVID, let alone get a mammogram. Any thoughts that you might want to share with our audience regarding what's happening because folks are not getting their screenings, and what we're looking at in terms of rates of cancer for 2022 and beyond?
We are projecting at least 10,000 more cancer deaths from breast and colon in particular in the Black and brown communities, because we have seen a decrease in screening. We were down 90% last year. And so, when we look at the areas and the people who are most affected, it is rural areas. It is those folks with lower socioeconomic status, those folks who have decreased access to screening. And so now is the time. Please, please go back to your doctors, get your screening mammogram. And if you have a symptom, you don't need a screening study. You need a diagnostic study. And there should be nothing that keeps you from the hospital, that keeps you from the doctor. If you have any of those changes that we talked about earlier in the webinar, you've got to get to the doctor, and you've got to get a mammogram, ultrasound, biopsies. You got to get seen by somebody, because too many people waited. And all across the country and really the world, the surgeons are seeing, we're all on our message boards. Are you guys seeing this? Are you seeing that? I'm seeing the worst disease I've seen in my career. We're seeing it because people waited, and because of the impact of stress on our bodies. And it's just been a really tough year. So COVID hasn't helped us at all. And Black and brown communities especially are going to suffer as a result of it.
Can you please speak to the point where people are saying, if you've had a COVID test, or if you've been vaccinated for COVID, your lymph nodes may swell, and it gives the appearance of having some level of breast cancer?
So the lymph nodes can be enlarged after the COVID vaccine. And this is why we encourage people, if you're due for your screening and you haven't gotten your vaccine, get your screening study first and then get your COVID vaccine. Because one, if you're a cancer patient and you get your COVID vaccine and then get a mammogram and the lymph nodes look enlarged, they're going to say, this is suspicious. You need more imaging, maybe ultrasounds, possible biopsies. We're at the point now where we're not necessarily doing biopsies on enlarged lymph nodes. If a person's had a COVID injection, we're going to bring them back in a month, 2 months, 3 months, and repeat that imaging. But it can make the lymph nodes enlarged because it boosts the immune system, and the things that fight our immune system and that fight infections are our lymph glands. It's our lymphatic system. So if you're due for screening, get your study first and then get your vaccine. If you've gotten your vaccine and you're due for screening, you may want to wait a few weeks, again, assuming you have no symptoms. If you got symptoms, go right away, COVID vaccine or not.
Okay, so do not wait. Got it. What happens when you have to tell your children, and I'm talking about young children, is there a way that you can make it meaningful? Aubrey, did you have to have a conversation with children younger than, let's say, 14?
Not at the time. So for me, in my situation, my daughter wasn't born yet. I was actually supposed to go to a fertility clinic to, if we wanted to have children, and I never made it. And 2 days before my surgery, we found out my wife was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
So by the grace of God, she's our miracle baby. So I didn't have to have any conversations with any children. She, I know from my diagnosis, that's something that she'll have to know about, especially as she gets older and, get tested. But yeah, no conversations with any kids. And, I was thankful for that. you know.
Yes, no, that's great. That's great. What about you, Ricki? Conversations, were your grandchildren around then?
They weren't around then, thank you. But my daughters were 19 and 26, and so they were kind of old enough to understand it. But still, it's a hard conversation to have. And one of the questions I had, well, is this going to happen to me? Because like, how do I prevent it? But we've talked to many moms, and we have so many young moms that just, it breaks my heart every day. We have so many young moms who are metastatic and have kids and have young kids, and when I see them interact with each other, they really just want to be with their moms. They don't really understand cancer. And I think their moms, the best thing is to be honest with them and kind of talk about what you're up against as much as they can digest. But also they see you as a mom. They still want their breakfast cooked. They still want their hair done. They still want to go to the mall. And so I think the moms that we see dealing with breast cancer with kids, they just try to live their life. They try to live their best life every day. And that's the best way to really deal with your kids, because that's their normal. They don't know any better. They know, and I think also they want to help as much as they can, so let them help. My daughters wanted to take care of me, and I did not want that at all. You know how we are. But I had to give into it. And, Haley took a term off of Dartmouth and was my caregiver. And I fought her to the bitter end, but she needed to do that. And I think they want to help you, let them help you.
Yeah, kids are remarkably resilient. My mother died when I was 7 years old. She died of ovarian cancer. She was 29. And I wish that she had sat down or someone had a conversation with us, because I didn't know until I was almost 29 what she died from. And this is a rare cancer, less than 1% of the population. But also, I think that, it would have helped to put things in a bit of perspective for me had I known she was here, and then she was sick, and then she was gone. And I didn't really know, and no one ever told me. And I feel like, our children are resilient. They're able to understand what's going on. They want to help. They want to be a part of, and they are, whether they want to be or not, they're part of this experience. Cancer affects every the whole family. And so having those conversations are really tough, but I try to guide patients through. There are good resources out there also for people who need to tell young children, folks who need to tell their teens. There's great books. There are books now by authors of color and survivors. Ricki, we feature a couple on the Touch site of how do I talk to my kids about losing my hair, about chemo, about cancer, metastatic disease. Women are living longer and longer. And so it's important to make sure that your kids know what's going on so that they can understand, how precious and valuable life is, and spend that time with you and be a part of that experience.
When you have to have, Ricki, when you had to have that mastectomy, what went through your mind? Was it vanity? Was it, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that this is an option? I mean, how did you deal with that?
Roz, I wasn't really attached to my breast. I wanted the cancer out of my body. I would have done anything to get it out of my body. So I stood up and said, okay, cut them both off. I don't want them. I don't need them. But so many women don't want to do that. They struggle with that decision. And I've had many arguments and discussions with women about taking that route. But you have to make a personal decision for yourself. But for me, it was like, I just want the cancer out. I don't care what it takes. So I want to live. And I tell everybody, make decisions that help you choose life. So for me, that was a decision to choose life.
No, that's excellent. All right, everyone, the time has flown. So in closing, I'd like for you all, please let everyone know how they can contact you, your social handles, your office phone number, Dr. Gary, again, your website, Aubrey. Ricki, share your information, please.
Sure. Aubrey, you want to go first?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook, Aubrey Sean Glencamp. Also Instagram under Big Ace 2000. And then for the guys out there, you also have a resource, the Male Breast Cancer Coalition.
We'll be in touch. Black Health Matters is going to be in touch because we're doing some patient education right now around male breast cancer. So
awesome.
There we go.
Aubrey's awesome.
All right, Ricki.
I'm Ricki Dove on Twitter. All of our social media is at Touch BBCA. I put it in the comments. And our website is touchbbca.org. We talk to everybody and anybody about breast cancer. Mo and I talk all the time about, we have a show The Doctor Is In, but we are, this is my purpose. I know God left me here to do this work, and I will talk to you at any hour of the day or night. about your experience and try to help you as best I can. So
Awesome.
Yeah. And she'll call me about it too. She sure
Right.
does.
I'm like, okay, 2
And
a.m.
I never
don't care.
mind. I'm the medical director for Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. So you can reach me through Touch. My social media handles, I'm Dr. Monique Gary. So at Dr. Monique Gary on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the Instagram, YouTube. And you can message me there. I will certainly message back. My website for the hospital is www.gvh, Grandview Health, gvh.org. We now, because of COVID, are able to do telehealth visits. So I can see patients from across the country now through the miracle of telehealth. And so if you have questions, issues, you need a second opinion consult, you're certainly welcome to reach me. But I'm always online, on the social media, and we will get back to you with answers, with resources. I partner with Touch with Aubrey and his organization, and we're available for anything that patients need, because you need a trusted advisor through this process. And if I can be a voice for anybody in our community and be a help, that's what we're here for.
And we know that you mean it. And we have to mention in closing that you'll be able to see Dr. Gary in a conversation with Vivica Fox at the next Black Health Matters Summit on November 13th. So Vivica Fox and Dr. Gary will talk about breast cancer in African American women. So more voices are coming into this conversation, which is a wonderful thing. So we're forming our community, and we're going to keep on keeping on. Thank you for joining us. Yvette, are you going to come on and say something, or are we closing? All right.
Thanks
I think
for having us.
I'm sorry?
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Yvette, thank you for this great opportunity to share with everyone. Again, I'm Roslyn Young Daniels. Thanks to our guests. Good evening. Stay well.
Be well.
Thank you so very much.
Blessings.
Thank you for joining MOBE Mondays.